Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and this is my GarbAugust trash report for week 2. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, week 2 down. This one, of course, was Paperbacks from Hell or Vintage Smut in my GarbAugust reading for this week. So yes, I didn't get through anywhere near as much as I had hoped to this week because life got in the way. Things popped up and cut into my reading time somewhat. So I've still got through a fair amount. But I did have an absolute pile of Paperbacks from Hell that I really wanted to kind of rip through, but sadly no. But they will remain on the pile of possibilities for when we get to Anything Goes in the final week or 10 days of GarbAugust. So let's jump straight in to what I read. I'm going to split this into the Paperbacks from Hell first, and then the Vintage Smut that I read. So I will warn you when we get to the Vintage Smut, because obviously by the nature of the books, I'm going to be talking about some stuff that's a little more adult. So yes, I'll let you know when we're about to jump into that section. As always, I've got my 1 to 5 ratings based on what I thought of the books in terms of quality, enjoyment levels, etc. And I will be continuing with my Trash Panda awards, which denote the trashiness of the books. So we have bronze for just a little bit trashy, silver Trash Panda for medium amount of trashiness, good amount of trashiness, and then gold for uber trash. So let's start with the first on the Paperbacks from Hell, which was Pestilence. By Edward Jarvis. I have had this for a while and I was very excited to read this. This is Killer Lampreys. It's set kind of starts off largely in Britain, but then it kind of pops all over the world, like looking at different incidents as the threat grows. And the lampreys grow. I thought it would just be kind of, you know, normal sized lampreys or maybe a little bit larger. But no, we're getting into gargantuan proportions by the end of it. Yes, that element of it is highly amusing. It is bonkers, that bit of it. I have given this a 2.5 out of 5. Largely because it is a book of not two halves, but kind of two elements. You've got the Killer Lamprey stuff, which is fabulous, and some of the characters and the dialogue, which is very tongue-in-cheek, it's very over-the-top, it's very dramatic. The characters are all kind of very much kind of uber stereotypes, archetypes. You know, it's got all the kind of markers of something trashy and as I say, quite tongue-in-cheek. And those bits are excellent. They're very entertaining. However, the other side to this is there are quite a lot of sections which I just found dull, where, you know, you kind of rather than focusing on, you know, the lamprey attacks and things like that, you'd kind of you'd not the attack would happen kind of off the page, if you like, and then we'd get kind of a section of reaction to it, but through kind of scientific debate or kind of political debate. I mean, there's one section towards the end which is kind of essentially almost, it's like a kind of a UN sort of council summit type thing about what to do about the threat, the lampreys, on a worldwide scale. And it just goes on too much and it's just dry for me. And it's like, that's not why I'm reading a book about killer lampreys. I want lamprey action, please. More lampreys. So that's why it's kind of got a very middling, because it is very much of two halves. It is, however, thoroughly deserving of a gold trash panda. This is trashy. The trashy bits of this are wonderfully trashy. So yes, I mean, it is, you know, there's some decent writing in there that I like, some good trashy writing as well. And there's some great little sections, like I am particularly a fan of alliteration in writing, but this one paragraph just kind of I particularly liked. Dozens of eyes dilated with horror as they caught terrible glimpses of blotched and mottled green-yellow bodies of gargantuan girth and unimaginable length, swarming and seething in a massed and maddened mesh of vile and vicious demonic destruction. Yeah, I like some of the wordplay in this. There is some decent writing for what it is. Do you know what I mean? In terms of it. This would very much be a comedy horror movie if it was made. What the other thing I particularly liked is, you know, it references Jaws, it references Amity, and it references Quint as a part of this world, if you like, this kind of, you know, universe, if you like, this reality, and it does reference that. And yeah, I quite like that. You know, that makes it quite trashy as well. So yeah, you know, still an enjoyable read, but I did find myself skimming over some of the more dull kind of sections of it, and just wishing for more lampreys. So yeah, but a quick read still, and as I say, you can skim over some of the slightly more verbose kind of discussion sections without losing anything. So yes, that's the first one. Okay, next up on the Paperbacks from Hell, I read Worm by Simon Ian Childer. Something horrible is crawling out of your worst nightmares. I love this cover. I think I've said that before, but I do. I love this cover. This one is about killer worms. It's about essentially it's about parasitic worms. And a kind of, not a mafia plot, but a conspiracy to infect many people with these worms. And it follows a woman, Olivia Finch, who is the sister of kind of one of the first known victims of the worm. And also the private investigator that she hires to help her find out what's going on, because this conspiracy could be connected to a doctor, perhaps. And so yeah, she hires Ed Corsi, who is a very kind of stereotypical kind of PI kind of character, alcoholic, gruff, kind of worn out, but still good at what he does. You know, still got a mind. You know, still got a brain in his head. But yeah, you know, kind of quite a stereotypical sort of gumshoe, I guess. And yeah, this one is quite gross. There's quite a bit of body horror in this. This one is a 3.5 out of 5. I really quite enjoyed this. This is a silver trash panda. It is awarded a silver trash panda. It's pretty trashy in parts, and yeah, it was much more enjoyable, I think, than Pestilence for the horror element of it. Pestilence wasn't scary. Pestilence was just silly. This was like, yeah, you know, this had some wincing and some sort of slightly more shocking elements to it. There is some, you know, it's of its era. I mean, this was when was this published? 1987. Yeah, this is kind of very much of its era and does contain some language in it that you might expect from that era. It does have some racist language and a racist character in it, although he is a bad guy. But it does have some kind of ideas, some, you know, ways of saying things that wouldn't be appropriate today at all. But yes, it is very trashy in parts. It's kind of an interesting one, this, because of the PI element to it, and Ed Coursey being one of the main characters that we really kind of follow throughout. It has elements to it of men's adventure. I think it feels a bit men's adventure-y at times as well. So yeah, a really interesting one. I really liked this. I really enjoyed this. This was quite a surprise at how much I kind of enjoyed this. I read this in one sitting. That's how much I enjoyed it. So yeah, it's, as I say, it's got some negatives to it, but the writing's decent and it keeps the pace going really well. It's quite exciting. It's quite tense, and it has a good ending as well. I think I wouldn't say I didn't see it coming, but it was still good. It still kind of made me go, oh, okay. So yes, a good one, this one. I would recommend this if you like a good, short, silly but slightly icky, in fact very icky in parts, bit of wormy, parasitic body horror. So there you go. Okay, and lastly on the Paperbacks from Hell, or sort of Paperbacks from Hell side of things, I read an ebook which was SNAFU, Unnatural Selection. And this is military bio-horror. This is modern stuff. So it's not technically Paperbacks from Hell in terms of stuff from the 70s, 80s, just into the 90s, but it's kind of got that, it's got that flavour about it. And this is short stories. This is an anthology of short stories. I didn't finish the entire collection, but I did read some of the short stories in it. And I will probably keep going with them because they are nice and short throughout the rest of GarbAugust. So yeah, this covers kind of all the kind of, you know, sort of creature feature type stuff you'd expect, but from kind of a military bio-horror side of things. So, you know, genetically engineered monstrosities or kind of, you know, horrid, grotesque, threatening alien species found on planetary exploration missions, all that kind of stuff. There's some good ick factor to this. There's some sort of, you know, it's short and sweet. There's some good tension. It's kind of, you know, you've got it's very tongue-in-cheek sometimes with its writing of kind of the military characters. So yeah, I've enjoyed what I've read so far, so I will keep reading. And it's by various different authors. It's got a good amount of trashiness to it, and yeah, it was a nice little palate cleanser, really, when I wanted to just pick up a short piece of something a bit more modern and something very different in terms of the military stuff. So yes, and the last one on the Paperbacks from Hell is one that I've not actually finished yet, that I'm partway through, and that is Orca by Arthur Herzog, and I'm treating this as a kind of a book that straddles week 2 and 3, because Orca, I believe, it's a I'm not sure whether it's a novelisation, whether the novel came just before the film or at the same time as the film, but it is, you know, it says now a sensational film, so it might have come just before, but it does kind of, I do think it's potentially like a novelisation. So yes, so I'm treating this as a kind of a mixed one, a crossover. So I'm partway through this at the moment. So far, I'm really enjoying it. So I will report back on this when I've finished it at the end of week 3. Right, so into the vintage smut then. So I will be talking about stuff with adult themes on this. So if that's not your bag, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully see you back next time. But if you're up for a bit of a chat about some vintage smut, then here we go. So first off, I read Eveline, which is by an anonymous writer, and it is Victorian smut. So we are kind of even beyond the vintage at this point. We are into antique smut. And I only read the first volume. I managed to get hold of a really, really super cheap ebook copy of the first 3 volumes, or I think all 3 volumes. I think there was 3 volumes of it. But I only read the first volume. And to be honest, I don't know whether I'll go back and read any of the others. This is a 2 out of 5. And awarded a silver trash panda. It's difficult. Actually, that's something I will say, is that it's quite difficult to kind of like gauge the trashiness of something when it's written in, you know, a style which is very much of its time in terms of Victorian. Because when I read stuff like that, it kind of, you know, it's very different language, but it's still somewhat formal. There's a certain style to it that kind of, I think, tricks my ears, or tricks my eyes, my brain, into kind of like making it feel less trashy. So it's quite difficult to gauge this one, but it is trashy, absolutely, by our kind of standards in terms of the markers. Yeah, this follows Eveline, who is a young woman or girl. It starts off, you know, with tales of her sort of young teenage years, and then time at school, and sort of into her sort of later teens, early 20s. It starts off with incest with a brother. Then it moves to some kind of sexual dealings with a sort of caretaker at the school that she goes to, the finishing school she goes to, who is not described favourably physically at all, apart from one thing about him. I think you can probably guess what that is. And, you know, she does things with him in exchange for him getting her some copies of Voltaire, the books of Voltaire, which she's not allowed at the school, so she has to source them from somewhere else. And yeah, that's all rather sordid. And then there's a couple of other kind of bits and pieces with some of the staff members, the members of staff at her home, at her house. She's reasonably well to do. And yeah, kind of sort of more of her kind of sexual experimentation with some of the household staff. And then to finish off the volume, we're back with the incest, this time with her dad. So I've given it 2, largely because the writing was quite interesting in terms of, you know, reading something from that era and how that kind of sort of activity is described. Interesting doesn't mean good, though. As I say, this was more of a kind of, it was an exercise in what is it like to read something that is essentially, you know, Victorian smut. I can't say I enjoyed it, really. I certainly didn't enjoy some of the more icky relationships. So yeah, I doubt I'll be going back to this one. I don't really want to read about more incest, thanks. It's not for me. So yes, 2 and a silver trash panda for that one. Next up was Italian Connection Cherry Delight #1, which is the first in a series called The Sexecutioner by Gardner Fox. This is essentially a mix of vintage smut and men's adventure. It's kind of a men's adventure parody, I think, in a lot of ways. It's pretty explicit in terms of, you know, well, it's explicit. There's just a lot of sex in it. There's a hell of a lot of sex in it. It's from, you know, sex to sex to sex. It's just, you know, there is a plot, though. I'll give it that much. There is a plot. There is a plot involving the mafia, and, you know, Cherry Delight is a spy, a femme fatale spy working for an organisation whose acronym spells Nympho. And it's very Austin Powersy in a lot of ways, and it's very tongue-in-cheek. I think Gardner Fox has got a sense of humour. I don't think he was trying to do anything serious with this at all. It's almost kind of a sex comedy in that respect. So say it's a parody. All the characters are extremely over the top, extremely stereotyped or archetypal. You know, you've got the mafia bosses, you've got Cherry, the kind of, you know, the femme fatale. You've got, you know, kind of Donna, the maid. You've got a countess in there. You've got, you know, kind of various little side characters, all of which add into this flavour of, you know, kind of spy trying to infiltrate the mafia to find some sort of particular gadget that they hold in their possession that could be dangerous to the world and get it out. But it's, yeah, it was amusing. The sex writing was terrible, but I think intentionally so, to a point. It certainly was laughable. There were elements of it where it was hilarious in terms of the word choices. Yeah, as I say, it was very, very, like, you know, X-rated Austin Powersy in that respect. I've given it a 3 out of 5, and if there was anything, if I'd have come up with anything above Gold Trash Panda, this would be getting it. But yeah, this is uber trash, but thoroughly enjoyable, quick read, and highly entertaining. Not at all sexy in any way, shape or form. None of it kind of even threatened to get the motor running. In that respect, it was just ridiculous in terms of how it was written, and as I say, highly amusing, to me at least. Or to say, Cherry Delight, I think was first published in like the 60s, 70s. I'm not entirely sure about that, but we're in that kind of range of that kind of era. We are very much in the vintage with that one. And then finally, the last one that I read, which brings us up to kind of, you know, really the minimum limit for calling something vintage, which is something from the 90s, and that is Big Deal by Helen Sandler, which is a lesbian erotic fiction. I read this when I was probably about 19, I think, something like that. I think it was either a girlfriend at the time had a copy, or somebody gave me a copy. I can't remember. But yes, I remember reading it, and I remember kind of being a bit like, whoa, by it at the time. But I didn't remember much other than that about it. So I thought I would give it another go. It'd be interesting to return to it over 20 years later. And see what I make of it. And yeah, this is a 1 star. It's very, very rare that I give things 1 star. It is, however, a Goals Trash Panda. Oof. It's as explicit as I remember it being. Absolutely. There is a very vague sense of plot, and the plot revolves around the deal that is made. The deal, I mean, the deal is told in the first paragraph. The deal went something like this. For every time Lane had sex with men, she would have to bring someone new to their sex life as a couple. So it's about 2 women, Lane and Carol. Lane is very much a butch, Carol being the femme. And Lane has a kind of penchant, should we say, for having sex with gay men, kind of as a boy, if you like. So there is kind of, I wouldn't call it trans identity in it at all, but it's, you know, there's some gender bending going on. So yeah, that's the kind of the deal. but also there are negatives to the deal in terms of, you know, if one of them does something the other one doesn't approve of, then there are punishments, essentially. But yeah, each chapter is basically just a sex scene that kind of vaguely moves the plot forward, but it's really just a chance to write some sex, some smut. The smut is not nice. The relationships in it are quite cold, and certainly some of it, I would say, is kind of quite toxic. As I say, I remember it being explicit and kind of being quite eye-opening at the time when I first read it, but I didn't really remember quite how. I don't even know what the word is. Crass, maybe? I don't know. It's like, yeah, there's very erotic fiction. I wouldn't say this is erotic in any way, shape or form. This is it's too crass to be erotic. Erotic to me suggests some finesse in the writing. Something left to the imagination, as well as some, you know, explicit stuff. No. I'm not sure how I got through this when I was 19, to be honest. As I say, I remember it being explicit and not particularly liking it, but I couldn't really remember why. I think maybe now I know why, and certainly now I've aged, and you know, have more of a handle on what I like, shall we say, and what I appreciate, and this ain't it. So yes, this was a big fat fail, this one for me, but as I say, 1 star and a gold trash panda. Okay, the only other vintage smut that I have on the go at the moment is Riders, which is an audiobook, and I'm still reading that. I am probably about halfway through that, but that is long. I mean, I know that the book itself is over 900 pages long, and the audiobook therefore is quite a few hours. So I'm listening to it in bits and pieces. I am enjoying it reasonably well at the moment. It's quite entertaining. The audible narration certainly adds something to that as well. The narrator has a, you know, sufficiently posh accent to make it quite amusing. And so, yeah, I will continue on with that basically for the rest of the month and just listen to it in bits and pieces. It's not the sort of thing I want to sit down and, like, you know, have on for hours. But it's the sort of thing that I stick on when I'm cooking tea, or, you know, kind of doing the hoovering or dusting or whatever. You know, it's a good thing to have on that doesn't take too much attention, but is an amusing read. So yes, so I'm still cracking on with that one. So that concludes my trash report for week 2 of GarbAugust. So yes, so week 3 is novelizations and books by famous people. So I will be doing a bit of each. I have got my Alan Titchmarsh ready and waiting for me, and I've got a David Cronenberg as well. That should be quite interesting. And then I've got lots of choice for the novelisation side of things. I've got some horror, some sci-fi, some action stuff. So yeah, we'll see what next week or this week brings to my trashy reading. And the wrap up for that, the trash report for week 3, will be out next Wednesday, similar time to this. So thank you very much for watching today, folks. Do let me know in the comments how your trashy reading is going for GarbAugust. I hope you're having a lot of fun. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming very soon. But from me, for now, stay trashy.